In this film, we'll look at how and when to call emergency medical services. Start with how to call them. You can use your landline phone or you can use a mobile phone. You dial 999 or you can still dial 112. Now 112 is the European-wide number. So if you're abroad, you can dial 112. It's similar that if you're in America, you would dial 911. Other countries will have other numbers. So if you go on holiday somewhere, it's always a good idea to know what the emergency number is for the area that you're visiting. Now, it doesn't always work, but often if you've got a UK-based mobile and you use it anywhere in the world and you dial 999, that activates the emergency services for the local area. But that is not always the case, so just make sure if you're travelling you do get that right. So bringing it back to when you're at home, you'll dial 999 and straight away then you'll ask what service you want. So we'll ask for an ambulance. They're going to ask you some questions, so you need to listen carefully and answer their questions as fully as you can. So there'll be questions like what's actually happened. They might ask you other conditions that you can see. Where are you? Your exact location. So you can tell them your home address. You can use what 3 words. You can give them any other information of where you physically are. It might be you're out and about, there's a car accident and you're not exactly sure, but just tell them roughly where you are on a road. They can triangulate your signal from a mobile phone, or they can triangulate as well through from a landline phone to where you actually are. They'll also need to know any other information. They'll need to know who you are. They'll know the number you've dialed from, unless it's a blocked number, and then you need to tell them a phone number that you've got. And also you need to get information from them is when is the ambulance going to be arriving. Now, depending on the severity of the injury will vary on what they're actually sending to you. But the clearer the information you give them, the better the service they're going to give you back. Now, if things change and you need to update them, you can always dial 999 again and get more information that way, or update them that perhaps things have got worse, or that maybe things have got better, or you need more help, or you're just worried about when the ambulance is going to turn up. So that's pretty much how you would call. There are lots of other ways that you can call, depending on where you are. And if you're remote areas, you can use satellite phones, you can use radios and things like that to communicate. But generally speaking, most of the places where you're at, you can just dial with your mobile phone. Now, the other key thing with the mobile phone is if you're with one network and that network's not strong in that location, when you dial an emergency call, it will automatically put it onto the strongest signal. It roams like it does when you go on holiday. So you may well be with, for example, Vodafone, but when you go on holiday, you're moving on to a movie star or a different network. So it works the same here. So it will always make sure that you've got the best network possible to make that call. If you have to send someone to call emergency services, then send them, get them to make the call, but always make sure they come back and tell you what's happened, and then you can send them to meet the ambulance. As far as when to call emergency services, this will vary on the injury, but as soon as possible, as soon as you identify there's a situation where you need help, get the emergency services activated. So if someone collapses with a cardiac arrest, who's doing CPR, immediately get the ambulance there, because we need that there as soon as possible. If it's a cut, things like that, once you've identified it, or maybe you want to stabilize it, stop the bleeding, and then call. If someone has just collapsed, you want to find out what's actually wrong. You don't know if they just fainted or there's something a little bit more serious. So in those instances, you may well need to put them into the recovery position or check them first and find out what's wrong. We'll cover more about calling emergency services and when to call them in other videos.